Hi everyone, here's the Bookchemist once again, and today I'm reviewing my first novel by Emile Zola, an author I've been meaning to read for decades. I remember studying him in high school and thinking that he sounded exactly like the naturalist writers that I loved, especially Giovanni Verga, writers who talk about the lives of characters living in absolute misery and explore the ways in which the decks of life and society are stacked against these characters from the very start. 13 years after finishing high school, I finally read my first Zola novel, Germinal, and let's just say that together with my reread of Madame Bovary earlier this year, it reignited my efforts to learn French. Germinal is a novel of incredible scope and daring and almost incomparable wisdom. It describes a mining strike in a small community in northern France. During the Second Empire, and it follows the lives of a handful of characters from this community, mostly miners themselves, but also a few union activists and local townspeople, a few overseers and managers, and even a few of the industrialists and investors who own the mine itself. Germinal is as gruesome on a literary level as it is clear-headed on a political level. When it comes to its plot and characters, it makes the novels of Giovanni Verga or Federico de Roberto or Buddenbrook's era Thomas Mann. It makes those novels feel timid and hesitant. It makes Thomas Hardy feel prudish, really. The misfortunes befalling the characters in Germinal, their magnitude and their nature, are almost unbearable. Many times during the reading, especially in the final part of the novel, I just had to put the book down for a few minutes because I couldn't really process what was happening to these characters. Now, a very long and stimulating discussion could be had on whether these gruesome and terrible events, battering, domestic abuse, childhood deaths, massacres of innocents, whether these events are believable or even justifiable in the novel. I won't go into it because it's a conversation with immense implications, but suffice it to say that to me a work of art doesn't really have to justify its likelihood to anybody, and so it can be as exaggerated, as larger than life as it wants to be. A more important, more relevant, more legitimate question is whether these events are being exploited. To put it differently, whether the misery of these characters it's being used as fodder, almost as a pornography of misery for the bourgeois and well-off readers who are going to read the novel from the comfort of their own homes. I don't think this is the case at all for Germinal, which is a very lucid work of fiction, even though it's written by a hand that is clearly shaking with indignation and rage at the ways in which the workers of France are being exploited by capital and by power. What makes Germinal a great work of literature and a novel for the ages, including ours, is that it refuses the simplistic and populist rhetoric of pitching the good angelic workers against the evil capitalists and industry owners. The miners as a whole are generally good people, even though they are prone to vices and full of flaws, just like any human being is, and even though amongst them you do find the occasional monstrous individual. But the ruling classes are very similar at the end of the day. They love their family members and their dear ones. They think of themselves as charitable and generous, and they believe that they are simply acting in the only way available to them in order to preserve their livelihood. On the whole, they are simply ignorant of the reality of the living conditions of the people who are beneath them in society, or to put it in a better way, who own less than they do. During a very significant scene in the novel, you see a few wealthy characters watching a mob, an angry mob, And what these characters say is, oh well, all this shouting will be good for them, it will work up an appetite, without realizing that this angry mob, actually they've been going hungry for weeks, they've been starving for weeks. Overall, the wealthy characters in Germinal just cannot see the struggles of the poor characters because their lives are so very different from these other people's lives, and also because they are lost in their own personal and private miseries, marital affairs, frustrated ambitions, unrealizable dreams. The problem doesn't lie in the malice or the nastiness of any given individual, be it a worker or be it a mine owner. The problem lies in the system, in this centuries-old sin, this system of oppression and exploitation that just cannot continue, cannot go on as it is. Or can it? Ultimately, that's Germinal's terrible question. Sure, this system cannot go on forever, it is a machine and like all machines it's going to break, but what's going to be the outcome of that breakage? Is it revolution or is it just more oppression? The fact that Germinal is brave and intelligent enough to ask this question and countless other contradictory, unanswerable questions marks it as a great work of literature, as opposed to simply a treatise or a work of propaganda. Zola does hold a very strong belief in a few concepts, most notably a belief in genetics as something that can explain away an individual's makeup and behavior, a belief that was actually quite common in a lot of 19th century literature and that these days feels silly both on a scientific and on a moral level. But this by no means impacts, or at least it didn't impact my experience of the novel. Not much at all, and I think it's easy to ignore and forgive when we read it from a contemporary perspective. In its political acumen and in its bravery, Germinal reminded me most closely of the late novels of Thomas Pynchon, in particular Against the Day and Bleeding Edge, which also talk about the oppressive nature of capitalism as a death cult that venerates these bloody gods to whom countless thousands, millions of lives are sacrificed throughout history, some of them in a burst of violence through war, through deaths on the workplace and further violence, and some of these souls are sacrificed through the slow grinding nature of oppressive exploitative work and labor. I absolutely loved Germinal. It met all of my expectations and surpassed all of my expectations, and I will definitely be reading more of Zola very soon, probably more works from his immense Rougon-Macquart oeuvre, possibly L'Assommoir, although I haven't really decided yet. And I'm just curious to hear from you. What did you think of Germinal? Are there lots of Zola fans out there? He is not necessarily an author that I hear mentioned much in the English-speaking world, and I'm just curious to discuss the novel with you. Let me know what you thought of it. Let me know if you had a different impression of the novel. Did you find all of its extreme gruesomeness excessive? Did it come in the way of your appreciation of the book, the struggle of these characters, the immersion in the world of this mining community? Let me know in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching this review, and thank you especially to my patrons for supporting the YouTube channel, and bye everybody.